symbols and statements. And all this means that there's expansion of this religious presence where people who wouldn't like to be part of it are forced to relate to all this noise, all this presence of religion in the public sphere. It's also related to the mushrooming of churches and mosques, particularly Protestant churches. We tend to focus on the expansion or the mushrooming of mosques, but what we have in fact is that Protestant churches also have been popping up wherever one goes. And of course, it's also related to an increment of presence through Muslim dress codes, hijab and niqab, and so on. And one particular thing I believe is which is more of a symbolic thing. That's the way that how Muslims increasingly have been asserting their position in the public. And I think the concept of a politics of recognition is relevant here, whereby Muslims are re-examining Ethiopian history and national narrative, which has, as you all know, been dominated by a Christian overtone, and that they, through this process, through this politics of recognition, demands to be recognized, to be included in the Ethiopian society as Muslims and as Ethiopians. The blurring of boundaries and increasing interreligious encounters have also intensified the different religious communities' protective mode, in which expansion of the other sphere is felt as encroachment by the other. And this is what I call protecting religious space. And this is something we see among the Orthodox in reaction to Protestant evangelism. I'd also find interesting to note this protective notion is dominant among Muslims, where we have a history of withdrawal, we could say. The history of interreligious relations have been asymmetric, where the Christians have been dominating, and this dominance, I argue, has led to a kind of voluntary withdrawal, of seclusion, of Muslims not engaging in the broader society. And while we also have Muslims increasingly trying to reassert themselves in the Ethiopian society, we also find contemporary Muslim movements, factions, they're called the Super Salafis, now they even have the Super Salafis, Takfiris, which put forward an ideological underpinning for this withdrawal. They're focusing on religious purity, they're very exclusivist, and they don't want to engage with the secular state, they don't want to engage with the broader society, they don't want to engage with politics. So there's a very interesting, and I think something we need to take care of, this protective mode. The other one I'm talking about, I need to go quickly through this, is reclaiming religious sphere. And I think this has particular relevance for the Orthodox Church, Orthodox Christians. The revolution of '74 and the continuing EPRDF policy of secularism has forced the Orthodox Church to maneuver in between the legacy of past glory, new political realities, and the changing religious landscape. And this has been very hard to digest for many Orthodox, and has resulted in what Dereja, my side here, calls a particular siege mentality. And I think that is really a good concept that captures this notion of being under attack by religious competitors, of feeling of being denied the rightful and legitimate position in contemporary society, contemporary Ethiopia. And it has spurred some interesting processes where one is trying to counteract this and reclaim lost space. And here comes a very interesting movement that really needs, we really need to look into, and that is the Mahabharata Kurdistan movement. And I'm arguing that this movement has reconciled itself with the secularist arrangement, yet remains diligent in underscoring the Ethiopian nation as Christians. You don't talk about the religious you don't talk about the religious political framework, but the national undercurrent is to remain Christians. And we have seen this through the invocation of Ethiopia as a Christian island. We saw it clearly during the Ethiopian Millennium celebration in 2007, the Timket holiday 2009, where we had T-shirts printed with Ethiopia as a Christian island, Ethiopia, Christianity and baptism, one religion, one country. And this is a loud and clear message of asserting the position of Orthodox Christianity as the religion of Ethiopia. The last process I'm dealing with is this contesting of religious space. So we have the process of expansion and reclaiming space, and that is intrinsically linked to the issue of contestation, which reciprocally feeds into the cycle of interreligious tensions. And a particular form of contestation relates to how Protestants and Muslims have sought to challenge the Christian Orthodox cultural hegemony. The Protestants have done this in a less confrontational manner, but the Muslims, on the other hand, has been far more explicit in contesting what they see as a prevailing Christian Orthodox dominance of Ethiopia. And this has been done through trying to challenge the historical narrative as being too Christian and hence too exclusive. And it's also, for good examples, I guess the Reggie will come to that, the church in the building of a mosque in Aksum, the denial of such has been forwarded as a kind of proof of how the present-day government still has its bias towards Christianity. And of course, everything happens in relationship. The Muslims claim that the contestation, the Muslim claims and contestation has been, of course, ill-received by many Christians who feel they have gone far enough in tolerating the Muslims. They are repeating that Muslims have been well accepted in Ethiopia, and it claims that it should have shown gratitude instead of disrespect. And such sentiments are moreover intersected with the imagination or the perception of an expanding religious extremism. So I deal pretty much with this, trying also to say something about why Christians are arguing as they do. And I have a large section where I talk about the government response to all these processes and the role of the state. And I will have to skip this, and if you allow me half a minute, I'll just get to the conclusion. It is obvious that religion and religious identities have gained enhanced importance in today's Ethiopia, and that this is related that fundamental questions are asked about national identity, the meaning of Ethiopia, which in turn has produced intense controversies which include the contestation, suspicion, and process of delegitimizing the other, and then in turn spurring interreligious tensions and, unfortunately, violence. I believe the critical dilemma here is that this secluded nature of these different religious spheres, largely inaccessible to outsiders, and the polemics or the nature of interreligious communication between the different groups, which tends to be on occasions pretty hostile, risk furthering a process of compartmentalization of Ethiopian society. And I also believe that it counteracts opportunities for real constructive interreligious dialogues, and then it inhibits a necessary social integration for the nation. I also believe that the secluded nature of these spheres and the state's exclusivist attitudes to religion has left the state largely oblivious to the details of ongoing religious discourses and dynamics, which makes it unprepared to handle unfolding religious tensions and to accommodate interreligious coexistence. I think it's very important for the state to take religion seriously. I think it's important for them to formulate politics that in actual sense could accommodate religious pluralism instead of securitizing religion, only talking about religious extremism. And this would entail acknowledging the relevance of religion in people's lives, to rethink the secular religious public-private divide, and to apply a broader perspective that moves beyond securitizing religion.
Excellent.
Thank you.